At their core, RPGs or role-playing games are made up of stories, characters, settings, choices, and consequences. Whatto chaps, my name is Magical Mike and I'd like to introduce you to this series of videos where I attempt to explore many of these aspects of my favourite genre in gaming. I'd like to talk about particular games, sometimes compare different approaches to tackling those aspects, and occasionally dive deep into specific character builds and explain why I think they're interesting. But first, let's talk about why RPGs are my absolute favourite genre, and the answer to that comes in the form of those core concepts that I mentioned to begin with: stories, characters, settings, and most importantly of the five, choices and consequences. I think everyone can appreciate an epic story filled with compelling characters that's set in a fantastic world, so what I'm going to focus on in this video are decisions and ramifications. This core concept can present itself in many different ways, be it in character race, skill point allocation while leveling up, choosing a side in a conflict, deciding where or how to explore, bartering with a merchant, or figuring out the best way to gear out your party. Each one of these ideas can produce vastly differing results based on your choices. Sometimes these are insignificant, like if you decide to sell an item for less money right now instead of holding on to it for later, but sometimes these choices can impact the entire game. A truly great RPG will have many of both of these situations, and I don't necessarily need to be presented with options to branch the story significantly all the time, but I certainly appreciate when those opportunities come up. For example, I'll happily play a very linear RPG if the gameplay itself has compelling choices, like how classes can alter your experience throughout. In Dragon Age Origins, your choice of race has a massive impact. You'll experience a lot of racism if you play an elf, and I found that particularly interesting. It's just one example. In Dungeons & Dragons, your choice of class can impact everything you do. Let's look into an example of this. A barbarian and a wizard are presented with a magically locked door that blocks their progress. How do you tackle this problem? The obvious answer to a more typical barbarian would be to just attempt to break the door down with his strength, being that they would be more capable of this approach over most other classes. However, in Pathfinder D&D, barbarians are able to detect traps through the use of perception, something that wizards are not quite as good at without using spells. A barbarian might also be able to find hidden objects through the use of the same skill, such as a key or another way to bypass the door that was not previously visible. Barbarians are also naturally better swimmers and climbers than wizards, and may be able to bypass a blockage through these other physical means at less risk than your average spellcaster. For your average wizard, the obvious answer here would be a simple knock spell. Knock is the perfect answer to any locked or sealed portal, and many player wizards would know this spell. In terms of skills, wizards have access to options that barbarians don't. Using spellcraft, they might be able to determine more details about the locked door, perhaps a counterspell or a special way to interact with it. Linguistics might also help, like how Gandalf was able to read the riddle written on the entrance to the Mines of Moria. And of course, wizards have access to flight, teleport, and stone-shaped spells to bypass obstacles completely. Morality is another incredibly interesting aspect of RPG choice-making. Let's have a look at another example. You're given a sealed letter by someone that is to be delivered to a second person. Upon delivery of the sealed letter, you will receive a payment. What do? The good character. Choosing to play a morally good character as best you can usually means that you'll follow instructions quite willingly, unless they involve something too dubious or outright evil. The morally good character will carry out this quest, hand over the sealed letter, and receive their payment. The quest ends there, or perhaps as a follow-up, with every person involved staying agreeable with each other. The neutral or evil character. On the other hand, the morally evil or neutral character may instead choose to give the sealed letter to another interested party, or to blackmail those involved. They may decide to react violently instead, or read the letter for themselves and use the information for their own gain. Neutral and evil decisions will often cause problems in role-playing games. By deciding to open the sealed letter to better understand what situation you're getting yourself into, you have voided the trust of one or both of the other characters involved in the quest, and you may suffer consequences. Perhaps you don't receive payment at the end of the quest, or maybe you miss out on the follow-up quest, but in return you might now be armed with information that might help you or another character in the future. I talked about this in my Deus Ex Quids In video as well, but that game has some interesting decisions involving morality. Upon meeting Zeke Sanders, you're able to make some choices in a hostage situation. You could simply attack him, or you can try to talk him down. Depending on your further choices, you can end up getting him killed by your own hand, or by the police, knocking him out, getting him arrested, or convincing him to help you leave the hostage and evade capture. Each of these immediate results have further consequences later in the game too, that I won't spoil here. Hopefully I've illustrated why choices like these are compelling. They draw me personally into game worlds because I suddenly matter. I'm affecting things around me in more complex ways than simply jumping on platforms or saying yes or no. Choices like those that I've described can bring game worlds, characters and stories to life by giving them motivations and personalities, and by having things react to how you've chosen to tackle any given situation. So please, by all means, share your thoughts in the comments and join me along in this video series as we talk about character creation, builds, themes and more. I've been Magical Mike, and thank you for watching.